Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into Patrick King's Read People Like a Book. In just the next few minutes, we're going to give you a really practical way to better understand everyone in your life, from the people you work with to your closest family. So, let's kick things off with a question. Have you ever been in a conversation and just had that feeling, that you're missing the real story? That sense that there's a whole other conversation happening just under the surface? Well, that's exactly what we're about to dig into. In this explainer, we're going to build this skill up piece by piece in 4 parts. We'll start with the stuff you can't see, what really drives people. Then we'll move to the visible clues in body language, zoom out to see the big picture of personality, and finally, wrap it all up with how to actually do this in the real world. Okay, let's dive into level 1, the hidden why behind what people do. The main idea here is pretty simple, actually. Before you can figure out what people are doing, you first have to get a handle on why they're doing it. It all starts with this one core concept. Every single thing a person does, whether it's a big decision or a tiny unconscious twitch, has a reason. Nothing is random. If you can learn to work backward from an action, you can start to see what's really motivating them. So one of the easiest ways to think about this is something called the pleasure principle. It basically says that everything we do is driven by one of 2 things. Either we're moving towards something good or we're moving away from something bad. And what's really fascinating is that for most of us, that drive to avoid pain is often way, way stronger than the desire to gain pleasure. For a more detailed look at our motivations, there's Maslow's hierarchy. The big takeaway here is that what drives us changes depending on what we need at any given moment. I mean, think about it. Someone who's worried about where their next meal is coming from is motivated by totally different things than someone who's focused on, say, creative fulfillment. Knowing where someone is on this pyramid gives you so much context for their actions. So, we've talked about the internal stuff, right? The invisible drivers. Now, let's get to the external, visible clues. This is where we learn to read the signals people are sending out, a lot of the time without even knowing they're doing it. People can choose their words so carefully, but their body language, that often tells a much more honest story. Our bodies just react to our emotions automatically. And those reactions can leak out in our posture, our gestures, our faces, revealing what's really going on inside. And one of the most powerful clues you can look for are these things called microexpressions. These aren't the big smiles or frowns we do on purpose. Nope, these are super fast, totally involuntary flashes of genuine emotion that can show you what a person is really feeling, even when they're trying to hide it. The work of researcher Paul Ekman is huge here. He found that there are 6 universal emotions, and the expressions for them are the same in every single culture on Earth. If you can learn to spot the tiny muscle movements for these emotions, you've got a powerful tool for understanding someone's true feelings. But, and this is really, really important, you can't just base everything on a single tell. Someone crossing their arms might be feeling defensive, or they might just be cold. The real skill is looking for clusters of behaviors. So when that defensive posture is paired with a clenched jaw and they won't make eye contact, that's when a real pattern starts to show itself. Okay, so we've looked at the why and the immediate what. Now we're going to zoom out a bit. We need to understand how a person's core personality shapes their behavior over time. This gives us the backdrop for everything else they do. A really helpful way to think about these long-term patterns is a framework like the Big 5. We can't go super deep right now, but the main point is this. Knowing if someone is generally more introverted or extroverted, or more agreeable versus more skeptical, that gives you a baseline for their behavior. It helps you tell the difference between a one-off reaction and who they really are deep down. So how do we actually put all this together in the real world? This last section is all about the practical stuff. How to be like an investigator, actively gathering clues and figuring out what they mean in real time. A tool that's way more powerful than you'd think is something psychologists call thin slicing. It's basically our brain's natural ability to make pretty accurate judgments from just a tiny snippet of behavior. The trick is to listen to that first gut instinct and then use the other tools we've talked about to see if it actually holds up. Now, when it comes to figuring out if someone's being dishonest, you've got to forget all the myths you see in movies about shifty eyes or a twitchy nose. The source material is really clear on this. The best tool isn't just sitting back and watching. It's about how you strategically steer the conversation. And here's a simple 3-step technique. First, you ask open-ended questions. Just get them to tell you a detailed story. Second, you increase their cognitive load. That just means you make their brain work harder. Ask them to tell the story backward, or ask a really specific, unexpected question. See, lying takes a lot of mental energy, and this pressure can make them slip up. Finally, you just watch for the cracks, inconsistencies in their story, or moments where their emotions just don't match what they're saying. After all of these techniques and strategies, it's so important to remember what the real goal is. This isn't about getting an advantage over people or catching them in a lie. As the author really emphasizes, it's all about approaching people with curiosity and with kindness, trying to understand them on a deeper level, not trying to judge them. Because ultimately, the real magic of reading people isn't about decoding them like some kind of puzzle. It's about connecting with them in a more real, more compassionate way. The true goal is empathy. So the final question really isn't what you've learned about other people. It's how are you going to use this to build better, stronger connections in your own life?